All good. So let's get started. Welcome to the ARIVE lecture series. So today we have Suranga from the University of Auckland talking about inspired curiosity and about the project Kiwrious. So that sounds very interesting. So I will just hand over to Suranga, and then at the end we just have a couple of more minutes for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone after a 1-week break to ARIVE seminar series. And one of the reasons I chose to share this topic, because I think this particular community can add a lot of value to this. It's still a relatively young project. What I'm going to cover today is I'll firstly give a background about the project. It's been about 2 years. And then I'll talk about Kiwrious. I mean, it's actually supposed to be Kiwrious Change C with K. So it's pronounced as Kiwrious, the Kiwrious Science Experience, how we developed this, the user-centered design process from a initial mock-up all the way to almost a product-like development, and that is going nationally in New Zealand as a pilot deployment. And also some of the takeaways, there are some takeaways that you can get when you do a large scale deployment and observe that over a period of a few months. So I'm going to share some takeaways. Then another parallel project we did, Kiwrious Play. I'm going to share some insights on that. And then finally, lots of challenges that we identified, as well as some opportunities moving forward. And that's where I think the ARIVE community could collaborate and support. So starting with the background, this was started in March 2019 as a response to Curious Minds grant, which is a MB call. They look for projects where we can make an impact in the young generation in New Zealand, specifically focusing on the benefits that we can bring, the impact that we can bring. So one of the things that they identified in their vision document is that significant amount of students in New Zealand, especially at the intermediate level, are losing interest in science. And as you can see, the numbers, I was surprised as a relatively new person in New Zealand. I thought New Zealand, being a developed country, should have much higher uptake on STEM related subjects. It looks like almost half drops out of interest in science. So our response to this was, can we use interactive technologies to change this trend? That was our proposal, which got funded, and we started in 2019 March. And the main question we proposed was, how do we keep the Kiwi kids curious? And basically it was towards fostering critical thinkers, and when the kids grow up, they should ask questions about the climate change, well-being, and contribute towards scientifically literate citizens and see the science around them. That was the grand challenge that we put forward. And of course, we knew that apart from what we read on the reports, for us to do something, we need a grounded understanding. So we started with a user-centered process where we visited local schools around Auckland, really observe how science is currently taught, what are the challenges, spoke to teachers, ran some workshops. And based on this process, we came up with a couple of representative personas for us to have a more grounded handle about the situation and what could we do. So a typical persona of a a student that we wanted to target with the first solution. Let's call him Jack, right? This is a typically 14 years old kid, lives somewhere far north. He goes to a rural high school. He likes sports, and he grows vegetable in his garden, and he's trying to work out how can he make his tomatoes bigger. And someone like him, what does he think about science? He thinks science was pretty cool at the primary, when he was allowed to do things like making volcanoes. But intermediate level, things became a bit boring. That's kind of a persona of a student that we wanted to target. In terms of teachers, let's call this persona Sarah. She's a typical science teacher. She's been teaching few years, and she has a bachelor's degree in science, and she has done a teaching diploma, and she's really keen to bring a bit of fun into learning science, but she has limited budget. Some of the teaching team lack of confidence. They are very pressed with time. They need to get to the curriculum. So how can we help students like Jack and teachers like Sarah? Especially for teachers, some of the quotes we received clearly indicates there is a interest, but as well as there's challenges, especially in terms of time. The biggest challenge is really the lack of time. You can see from these quotes the sheer quantity of work. They need to get to the curriculum. There's not a lot of flexibility in terms of resources and tools. So the question was, how can we tackle this? How can we support? They do want to have a more of inquiry based, fun doing science as opposed to reading and talking about science. So based on all this initial understanding, we wanted to focus on a solution which is interactive and collaborative and inquiry based, to do science, to learn science, and really establish the fact that science is empirical, science is tentative, science is collaborative, science is creative. How do we establish those values? And again, based on our understanding, if anything were to go to schools and support kids, we realize this needs, especially in our solution, this needs to have three key parts, and we call this whole total experience to be the Kiwrious science experience. So the three parts is, firstly, we build these plug and play sensors. These are very simple to use. They can measure phenomena around you, and they simply connect to the computer with a USB cable. I'll go into details of that in a bit. And then secondly, we focus on building a digital platform that allows students to post their experiments, find inspiration, start talking about science to each other, collaborate with each other. And then final piece was, we built a whole set of teaching resources for teachers, so that this is not extra work. This is still part of their curriculum fulfillment. In fact, the materials we developed are aligned with the level 4 and 5 national curriculum. These are the three pieces. For the first piece, the sensors, of course, we went through a whole prototyping and design process. The goal was to keep the hardware simple and low cost. And we made a conscious decision to make it a direct connection via USB, because that eliminates the need of these units to have standalone batteries, communication modules, and also a lot of processing power. So this acted as almost a peripheral device to the main smart device that they are connected, keeps the cost down, makes it more reliable, doesn't require pairing. That was the whole idea. Started with typical breadboard and went on to standard PCB. Then we started looking into how do we, from the sensor design itself, make it a bit more attractive and representative. So went from left all the way to right, where you see a ultraviolet and light sensor. The shape also represents what it's doing. And we put all the components on one side of the sensor. The other side had a color marker, so people can associate from the color and from the shape, and create a bit of playfulness. And eventually we ended up building 6 sensors. And these are actual PCBs that we developed. So the one I showed you that measures ultraviolet and light, then the one below that, which is infrared body temperature or any surface, contactless temperature. The one in yellow is conductance. You can attach 2 crocodile clips and measure conductance of a material. Then the heart shape is heart rate. And then the droplet shape is the humidity and ambient temperature. And the cloud shape is the air quality, basically volatile organic compounds. These were designed all the way from the prototype into something that is manufacturable at volume. This was done all in the lab, and then we worked with the OEM manufacturer in China after, I think, about 6 months of back and forth. And finally, we had produced 10,000 pieces of these sensors. And you can see they just nicely fitted into entire elevator as we brought them into the lab. And the final packaging, we did from sensors all the way to packaging, the guidebooks, everything. It looks like something like this. That is meant to be a classroom kit, and that has like 8 drawers. Each one had 20 sensors, and then you had 20 USB cables and 20 crocodile clips. So this was meant to be kept in the class where kids can check them out and put them back in. This was the class kit, and we produced 70 of these kits and kept some spares for other work. So that was the whole process of development of sensors. And then in terms of the digital, the interactive platform, the whole idea was to support scientific inquiry, which includes, a typical scientific inquiry would be from a very circular process, making observation. From the observation, you form a question, leads into hypothesis, you design an experiment, you collect data, you analyze and interpret the data, then you validate or invalidate your hypothesis and leads to another observation. It doesn't always go like that cycle. You could start from anywhere in that cycle and then jump between these states. So it's a bit complex. So we wanted to build some of these elements, but the goal was to help students understand the science is empirical. It's not the absolute truth. It's what's the best known truth until somebody finds something else with evidence. And it was really about for kids, again, what teachers said. It's very difficult to encourage them to make repeated observations. Why do I need to do this few times? And why do I need someone else to do it and then check if they get the same results as I do? So we wanted to encourage that repeated observation, sharing, replication. And initially, I thought, we could start with mobile or laptop, but again, based on what's being used in the school, they wanted this to run on Chromebooks, because that's the most common device they have. Some of them bring their own devices. At the least, whatever we do should be Chrome browser compatible. In fact, the sensors we developed, we wanted them to be accessed through the browser. And at the beginning, it was going to Chrome and enabling experimental features and enabling the USB reading, because that's usually a security sensitive feature. But now with our development and conversation with Chrome, we are official part of Chrome 88 and above, the latest Chrome. So you don't need to do any configuration. Once you plug in Kiwrious sensors, the serial values are available on the browser itself. So that was the intention. Then we made prototypes and we went to schools and let students try stuff. Some of the things we found that didn't work is that if you make it a bit formal, students find it very not inviting to write a lot of stuff. They want to jump into doing stuff rather than planning, spending a lot of time reading and planning. And they didn't like repeated measures, but they do like seeing the values, and the values are changing when they fiddle with the sensors and try different things. They like moving around collecting this, and then they were really keen to see what their friends were doing. Based on this, we, as a research question, we wanted to really first understand, is there a value in integrating sensor readings directly into a interactive worksheet? And we investigated that as a research project, because most of the tools, what you have is you have this dedicated tool that does the measurement. You record the data somewhere, then you do your interpretation, calculation, and presentation somewhere else. That disconnect versus doing everything in one go. You have the sensor data, you have your observation, you have your interpretation, all in one setup. We wanted to see the value of that. So basically built in the prediction, observation, explanation all into one. Studied that with 42 kids, and we wrote our findings. Last it was accepted to Interaction Design with Children 2021, and that was the best short paper. So that was a bit of a research as we developed, and then in the final version of this online platform, which we call the Inquire Editor, we made it a little bit more open-ended. So instead of guiding through every step, we made it more like scientific histogramming. You snap an observation, and it's a picture with the sensor values overlaid, and you can take multiple of these. You can write about the conditions, under which condition you did that, and you can post it for others to replicate or remix, and you can comment on others. You can react to others, and there were challenges that you could respond to. This was built in, and then we took all the other administrative considerations, such as how do I create my own class, make sure that I can invite my students into that class, so all the requirements from the teachers. And finally, this is the kind of stuff that the kids did when you gave them that open-ended possibilities, and some crazy stuff that we never thought of. Somebody was using the volatile organic compound to understand how smelly their dog's breath is. Somebody wanted to see the correlation between drinking coffee and heart rate. This interesting stuff, and teachers reported interesting observations that they made when the kids were given the freedom to explore. And the third piece was, as I said, all the teaching materials. This was a significant component. At the beginning, we did very scripted materials. This is a 1 hour session. First 5 minutes do this, second 10 minutes do that. But the teachers didn't like that very scripted approach. They want a balance between the flexibility of them changing, but not so open-ended. They needed some guidance. So we created lots of lesson examples, suggestive examples, recipes, and we created a different micro site to manage all of that. And all of these are in line with the New Zealand level 4-5 curriculum. And on top of that, we created what we call professional development community, which is a group of teachers that we meet every few months to talk about their experience, and then our lead teacher also share her experience, and that supporting materials and these discussions makes gives the confidence to teachers about how to use the materials, and it gives them that jump start. And also they don't see this as extra work. This is part of their teaching, and they can substitute their previous form of teaching with this and still fulfill the curriculum requirements. And once all these pieces are figured out in a space of, I think about, with the COVID, took a bit of time, and the production hiccups and everything, we managed to release this year. April, we started releasing this to schools as a product. We wanted to see what's happening on the ground, and as we speak, we deployed this across New Zealand, 35 schools, 4,200 sensors, and this number 488 is I think a few weeks ago. We have live data logging and visualization. When I checked 2-3 days ago, we have had 1,198 inquiries among these kids. So that's quite a number. And last term, in these 35 schools, most of these teachers use this as part of the teaching. And that was quite satisfying. The amount of work that we put in is going into something that's happening real. I'll just show you a very quick video of kind of stuff that's happening in the class with the sensors available, because this is very different from them having the science kit, just one piece that operates under the teacher's eyes, versus the sensors that allows kids to simply pick and do what they want to do. And we gave the full assurance to teachers, don't worry about them breaking them, don't worry about them throwing this away. So with that sort of assurance and freedom, this is the kind of stuff happening in the classroom. If I'm not mistaken, this was them using the light sensor, mainly trying to figure out why do we have to wear sun hats in the summer? What's the effect of the sun blocks and the different materials? Even simple discoveries such as you go near the window, put the UV sensor outside the window, you see a UV index around 6, 7, 8, and you bring the sensor just inside the glass, your light value remain the same, but your UV goes down because the glass filters. That's why you don't need to wear the hats inside the classroom, but outside you need to wear. And they realize that kind of stuff, and then they ask questions based on the observation, and that gives a good handle to the teacher to explain different materials absorb different wavelengths and stuff like that. And these are some of the quotes we received from teachers. They said it made my class very cool. There's something for everybody, especially for reluctant learners, those who doesn't want to write and plan. They can get started with something and see a number, and then at least keep engaged. And then if the teacher goes and try to explain why this number changes and stuff, there's a lot more openness to listen. This is just a quick video showing teachers from different parts of New Zealand talking about their hands-on experience with Kiwrious, how it helped them.
Things that really struck me today was how quickly they sparked ideas off of one another, that they were actually thinking science. I wonder what would happen. It was amazing to hear them say, I wonder if this would happen, and to know that we can actually find out an answer for them.
Just bringing that nature of science into the children's learning. I'm really excited about being able to use these so that they can start inquiring rather than being taught what to do.
There's lots of flexibility, lots of opportunity for the kids to do their own, come up with their own questions and do some experiments, genuine experiments, so they can actually find out something they didn't know before, which I thought was really, really cool.
versatility that it gives you to do so many different experiments or just hands-on activities, and the students can fully see the data that they themselves are getting. They don't have to read about it or look at it from another scientist's point of view. They can actually be, oh yeah, no, I have my own data that I myself collected. That
most of the time students say, okay, what's the relevance? How can I make it relevant? This is a very good way to link the environment to the research. So link science to the environment. It's a very easy way to make that connection.
We do thermoregulation, so we could use the heart rate sensors and the temperature sensors to measure changes in those things before and after doing exercise.
The light sensor modeling the seasons and how that changes, so they can grasp, oh, this is why we get the seasons.
We'll be using it at looking stuff around our school environment, but also going out and doing some extreme health.
Built into contexts like pollution and sustainability, where we're using it to go and explore levels of different chemicals.
Basically, any of the sensors can be used across any year level. You can find any way to make any of the sensors applicable, I think.
Those are some of the reflections from teachers after they tried the sensors in the classroom. So that's the national deployment of the Kiwrious science experience. And in parallel, we did another mini project to really understand other possibilities with this with the sensors provide, which is basically having real-time sensor data available on the browser. So one of the things we wanted to explore is, given that there's a lot of enthusiasm around block-based programming as a way of allowing young kids to get into programming and understand the logic and the creative side of things, we saw there's opportunity to link Kiwrious sensors because, for example, if you take Scratch, it mostly responds to inputs being keyboard or your built-in touchscreen. We wanted to understand how real-time environmental data may influence the type of the programs kids would do and the motivation. And our hypothesis was that with the real-time sensor data, it will motivate kids more, as well as it will allow them to do more variety of programs. Here you can see it's a very simple program that allows this bat to change its behavior depending on the light. So actually, when you cover the light sensor or let it have more light, you can change the behavior, and it's more seamlessly connected to the environment. And what we did was we built a extension where those sensor values are simply plug and play, available as blocks. These are custom made extension to Scratch, and you can either have the sensor value as is, or you can have some built-in logic. If the sensor value is more than this or less than this, you do something, or if the sensor is going up, do something, going down, do something. And we ran a workshop to really understand if this real-time sensor data will motivate the students to learning in Scratch. And it's simply coding with Scratch, connecting a sensor, and then creating the programs they want. We found some really good results, which is now under review for SIGC conference, which is one of the premier conference for computer science education. What we found is that with the sensor-based input, as you can see, it influenced different types of blocks. The blocks that control the motion, control the look and feel, control the audio and logic that influence. Whereas when they did the vanilla version of Scratch without the Kiwrious blocks, it was the variety was not much. It was very much they used the keyboard and the touchpad mostly to control the AV and the motion. As well as when we asked the students about their motivation using the intrinsic motivation inventory, IMI. You could again see the students were really giving high values in terms of the motivation and enjoyment. This middle two are the reverse questions, so you expect those to be low. And then these are some of the qualitative stuff. The one that I remember the most is they used the conductance sensor and they were creating a human loop. So they had one guy holding one end, the other guy holding the other end, and they kept adding more people into that loop. And they said, add more people, the conductance goes down. They had like that kind of really exciting stuff to try out. Yeah, so that's the side project we did to see if the same framework that we built, the sensors we built, what else can we use it for apart from science. So we were lucky enough to, in a space of short time, to be able to complete this much, and we received some recognition in the form of the Fast Company World Changing Ideas 2021. We are a finalist of Best Design Awards New Zealand as social impact, value of design, and user experience. We just received the notification that we won the Good Design Award Australia. We are also part of the University of Auckland Velocity Challenge, where we won the social innovation category. We have been funded by, at the beginning, Kiwrious Minds grant. Now AWS funds the platform, and then we get few other support from corporates. In fact, we set this up as a not-for-profit foundation to continue to support everyone, all the intermediate level students in New Zealand, regardless of their socio-economic status. So that's what we have done so far. But in my mind, I think we have only scratched the surface, and there's a lot more to solve than what we have done. I'm taking a more critical view of what we have done. So one of the things I'm not entirely satisfied is the student engagement. Yes, they had so much fun in the classroom. Teachers said it was useful in the classroom. They were given lessons, and the students did this 1,000+ inquiries. That was all good, but I don't think we really settled the part about intrinsic motivation. Although we made the sensors available, we wanted to see if the students are doing things on their own outside what the teachers are telling them to do. And we did monitor all this stuff in our server logs. So this is one of the telling graphs. We monitor how many of them actually went on to do more stuff outside that classroom session. You can see out of 1,000+ students, there's only 2 that had done this for more than 5 days. And very quickly, the first session, many, but then very quickly, they fulfill I think part of the reason is that this is still presented inside the classroom. They still see this as part of their school work. And then this is not going to compete with their other fun time, their fun time with the other kids, their fun time with playing games and stuff. This doesn't count. This is school work, and I fulfill that. I'm done. That's part of the reason. The other part of the reason is that although we told the teachers it's fine, you can just give this to kids, they can lose it, they can break it, but most teachers still want to save these resources. They want to make sure that these are available for the next year. And we have had emails from the students asking for sensors, and we told them, go and borrow from your teacher, and apparently teacher is not so keen to just give it away. So that's part of that, but I think that's a minor problem. The major problem is there's not enough fun and engagement for me to compete with my other entertainment time and do it outside school. So that is something that I think needs to solve, especially if you want to really get students to be curious and be interested in science, and that becomes really integrated part of their life. That's one. Then of course the other issue is we made these custom sensors. That's nice, but only 10,000 pieces are there. How do we do more of that? That's relatively easy to solve. It's more of partnering with a electronic manufacturing person and hand over the building and selling part to them. And I'm in touch with companies such as Sparks Fund and see if they can take it forward and make it like make it into a DIY consumer sensor, as well as we can always put these designs open source, so whoever wants to build this could do that. And thirdly, very keen to understand the learning outcomes. For that, we did implement a gold standard how people measure scientific outcomes. It's called Views About Scientific Inquiry, WASI. That's a standard questionnaire that people use. We wanted to do pre and post. We did the pre and we had 600 plus responses, and the average of WASI suggests that we are 10% below from the global average. So that's a reason to support why we did what we did. But the post WASI, we are not getting enough responses. Part of that is because of the lockdowns. Part of that is because we wanted it to be an optional part, so some people don't bother doing it. So we have only handful. Yeah, so I think there's still other ways to measure the learning outcomes. Those are some of the challenges and potential, as well as the device being it restricted to Chromebooks and devices that has Chrome browser doesn't really leverage what the sensors has to offer, the spatial, the mobile aspect. So some potential ideas that I'm throwing out where this community could think about and help out. One of them is thinking of mobile. If you think of mobile phone, then suddenly it opens up a lot more stuff. In fact, it also addresses the availability of the sensors, because you can do some things with just the built-in sensors of the mobile. For example, you can implement the light sensor with the camera. But if you had the Kiwrious sensor, maybe you can do a lot more powerful fusions, such as connecting the UV sensor and connecting that with the location and time. And if you walk around, you create a map of the UV in Auckland, and then I can compare that with someone in Singapore, someone in Christchurch. So you could do that powerful stuff, and availability of smartphones is much higher compared to availability of laptops and tablets. So that's one direction. We just started building the mobile compatible version, and at least we have an Android SDK. So anyone keen to build Kiwrious enabled mobile interactions, the SDK will make it very quick and enable you to do a very quick start. And we have put that on GitHub as open source. The other thing, really the challenge is the engagement part. For that, there's a lot I think we could do with the AR aspect. One thing is, this whole thing is about what these sensors are doing is it makes invisible visible. The UV becomes visible, the air quality becomes visible, all this phenomena around me becomes visible. But maybe this 2D representation is not the best representation, and there might be better ways with AR to connect things in the context and maybe add a bit more fun, so that the learning becomes less formal, but there's still learning, but learning becomes less formal. The motivation and engagement could be the key driver. What I understood is, if you had a container that is upside down, doesn't matter how much you pour, doesn't go into container. So I guess first thing would be to get their attention, and the motivation engagement is the key. Once you get that channel open, then we can squeeze in, let's say, for example, we were just thinking, if we had a game, let's say Pokemon Go inspired game, where you could collect these assets in different location under certain conditions. Let's say this little thing appears when it's dark, humid, then either you have to create such a condition artificially or go to such a condition, and you can also make sure that you built in the repetition aspect. To get that thing, you have to create that condition over and over again for a few times. So you can build in the the science being data driven. It is about multiple observations, validating each other's stuff in a subtle way than in a more formal way. And this could be introduced directly as opposed to through school, so they don't see this as a schoolwork. There's some things to do. I put forward an initial proposal where I said we can now use sensors accessible to all. It could be Kiwrious sensors. We just made things like microbit sensor compatible with our platform, and think of a mobile, and maybe use the gamification and AR. Like, say, for example, as I said, maybe when you do your measures, virtual character could come out and say, oh, find this the most wet part of the garden, and then the kid would go find that, some form of reward. I don't know exactly the way to rather exact concept, but I know there's a lot of room for creating engagement and motivation that will lead to even better outcomes. At least the good thing is the sensors were built with this possibility. We don't have to re-engineer the whole thing. When we build the sensors, we put markers, so they are in all these 10,000 sensors, the AR markers, as well as at the protocol level, the header information has the identifier which sensor it is, so you can combine those two. And these are very initial testing. You can overlay stuff if you wanted. So that possibility is there, and that's where I think this community could add significant value in terms of if you want to collaborate in that project that I mentioned, if you want to have access to sensors and to some of these SDKs that we have developed. We have developed Android SDK for you to do any mobile application. We have developed Unity plugin, so it's available in Unity for you to build any games or any VR experiences. We are in the process of finalizing the JavaScript library. All these are available. The sensors are available. So if you want to do something on your own, that's fine. If you want to collaborate, I'm happy to have a chat. And that's the very reason we have come this far. It's a work of a large group of people, mostly from my lab. We did collaborate with the Department of Education in the University of Auckland. And now we are collaborating with computer science department, some researchers in Germany. So I think more collaboration, more open sourcing, and given that we are focusing on impact, and there is a organization which is not for profit, so it's the impact is the driving factor. Yeah, so happy to take questions and any suggestions, any ideas on how we can create even more impact. Thank you.
I think there are some questions already in the chat window. So I think the first question was, can we measure fatigue? I think this was with regards to the sensors initially. Is this right?
So I can see the question.
It's from me, Suranga. Now we're starting to look at how we can measure fatigue so that it ends up being a measurement at the roadside for pulling up drivers. We can do blood tests and breathalyzers and all that sort of stuff, but ultimately people die on the roads from fatigue. And it'd be nice to have a fatigue measurement at the roadside that the police could use. That's the long-term goal. So I was just wondering what the capacity of these sensors were to pick up eye movement related to fatigue.
So the current 6 sensors, there's no camera. So what I could think of is, if we do the mobile integration, of course you can do the mobile camera. But what we do have is, for example, the heart rate sensor, the HRV that gives you indication of the the cognitive load. So, so that may be an indication.
Not fine enough. Not fine enough.
Yeah.
It has to be a law ironclad type from a law perspective to test someone on the roadside and say, you're tired, give me your keys, can't drive any further.
So I was talking in the context of this project, but we have been working on other very specific research projects where we were using the built-in camera of the device, as well as we incorporated a single camera that looks into your eye, that can do your eye saccades and the fixations, and not only the fatigue. We have a journal under review. We could even differentiate if someone is trying to recall something versus is this a familiar object. So you could provide that support on the go. And I have seen a specific research work that looks into detecting the fatigue and providing feedback to get the driver alert. That is using a single camera looking at the eye, using the corneal the forgot the term, the diameter of the
pupil.
Pupil dilation.
Pupil dilatation.
Yeah. So there's a PhD student. Her work was primarily looking at pupil dilation as an indication of the fatigue and also intention to recall memory. So we have done separate piece of work, but this was mostly at the intermediate level, and that also gives us the flexibility of sensors. Not they need to be consistent, but they don't need to be very high precision.
Yeah. Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question, Steffi?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Suranga. Very impressive work. Very impressive work. I really liked your talk. Thank you a lot. So I have two questions. First question is: so how, if I want to, how do I get hold of a sensor kit? So how do I get it?
So you just let me know your shipping address, and as soon as we are back to level 2, I'll send you.
Excellent. Yeah. It's even better than I thought. Question number 2 is: so your approach seems to be very, very successful, right? So you get into the schools, you get the teachers engaged, and so on and so forth. So what is the magic formula here? Because I mean, there are the Spark Fun sets and all the science and fun electronics kits and all that, and there's Makey and all. So what do you think from your experience now with that project? What was the difference? What made it that step?
Yeah. So I have a bit more colored view because of for me the technology part is not interesting. So because of that, I think really the magic for me, why this was used now across many schools, as opposed to maybe they could have bought some sensor off the shelf. There are other things like Pocket Labs, which is self-contained sensors that you can plug and play. Out of many reasons, I think the primary reason is the professional development community, the teacher resources. They are so confident to use what we have given them, primarily because we had Dawn Garbett. She, as a senior member of the education department, most of the science teachers happens to be her students back in the years. And when she was part of developing the curriculum, and we validate that with several teachers, initially we had about 15 teachers who were part of giving feedback and co-developing that curriculum. And now, as a teacher, this is not extra work. This is not a toy. It's not a cool tech. This is something that's integratable in my classroom that fulfills my teaching duties. And it's not just one time handing over and running away. We have this professional development community as a close group that we have meetings every couple of months. And when a teacher finds something useful, they contribute with other teachers. We share all these lesson plans as editable documents on a Google Drive that they can take, they can personalize. For me, that was the first, the biggest factor. Then there are second level factors, and they're probably equal. One of them is, as opposed to many of the things available off the shelf, this is much low cost because of the way we design the sensors. And we work directly with OEM manufacturers. Of course, we gave them free of charge to these schools, but even if we were to cover the cost, one of these pieces is $5. So that makes it possible for me to have every student holding onto a piece, as opposed to me demonstrating some of the equipments we have seen. There's Australian made version that's available in some Auckland schools, over $1,000. So they're very protective. They're very, it doesn't really democratize the access. So the low cost and that module approach, I don't need to, if somebody borrows this, they're not borrowing the whole stack. Somebody can borrow the humidity, somebody can borrow the heart rate, the specific decoupling, although it makes sense to build one giant thing with everything, the decoupling, keep it simple, keeping it low cost, helped, and also, you know, easily plug and play into their existing setup. And I think the other piece is we were not pitching them a product, we were doing research together. And of course, some of the papers that's coming out indicating the value in terms of motivation, in terms of using this WASI questionnaire, that also gives them some additional confidence that there is, it's not a product pushed to them based on the features. There's also empirical understanding. So these three things together, but to me, the biggest thing is the PDC, the professional development community, and the support.
Kiwrious. Great.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? I don't see anyone else asking questions, but I think we're also slightly coming closer to the end of the session. So big thank you to the impressive presentation, and I think we are seeing each other next Tuesday. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hopefully, if somebody were to watch this video, and if somebody wants to, as Olga asked, get hands of these sensors, get hands onto all our development resources, the Unity SDKs, Android SDKs, all it needs is an email to me, and we are more than happy to see what the community is able to do with what we have developed.
Awesome, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. See you. Bye.